The broken treated the message that changed everything. The holographic display flickered to life in the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council. Representatives from 47 species turned their attention to the human figure materializing. Before them, Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Corps stood perfectly still, her uniform crisp and her expression unreadable. The message she delivered was simple, clear, and delivered in the universal translator's monotone voice that every species understood. To all members of the Galactic Council and their allied forces, this is Earth's final warning. Cease all aggressive actions against human settlements, vessels, and personnel immediately. We have maintained peaceful relations for 50 years, but our patience has limits. Continue these attacks, and we will stop pretending to be civilized. The transmission ended. The hall fell silent for exactly 3 seconds before erupting in what could only be described as laughter. The Valdari ambassador, a towering reptilian creature with golden scales, was the first to speak. The humans threaten us. These emotional creatures who cry over wounded animals. High Counselor Lex of the Zephyrian Empire tapped his crystalline fingers against the podium. In 50 years of contact, humans have never shown true aggression. They negotiate, they compromise, they even apologize when defending themselves. This is desperation, not strength. But Ambassador Kira Voss of the Centauri Republic remained silent. She had spent more time studying humans than any other council member, and something about Admiral Chen's tone disturbed her. There had been no emotion in the delivery, no anger, no fear, just a statement of fact. The Valdari's fatal mistake. 3 days after the warning, the Valdari Empire made their decision. Emperor Krathos, ruler of 17 star systems, had built his reign on conquest and intimidation. The idea that a species barely 2 centuries into space travel could threaten his empire was laughable. The first target was the merchant vessel Harmony's Dream, carrying medical supplies to the frontier colony of New Geneva. The Valdari cruiser Shadowfang dropped out of hyperspace directly in the ship's path. Captain Maria Santos, a veteran of the Merchant Marine, immediately sent out a distress signal. Terran vessel, prepared to be boarded, came the harsh voice of Captain Vex, the Valdari ship's commander. Your cargo now belongs to the Empire. Captain Santos activated the ship's emergency beacon. We're a civilian vessel carrying medical supplies. This is a violation of the Galactic Peace Accords. The Valdari response was a plasma torpedo that tore through the Harmony's Dream's engine section. The ship went dark, its 43 crew members trapped as the Valdari boarded and stripped the vessel of everything valuable. When they were done, they left the ship drifting in space, life support failing. The rescue ship found them 18 hours later. 12 crew members had died from exposure when the life support failed. The others were hospitalized for weeks. The attack was not isolated. Over the next 2 weeks, 17 human vessels were attacked. Mining stations on the Outer Rim were raided. The Valdari were testing Earth's response. Expecting diplomatic protests and economic sanctions, they received neither. The silence before the storming, the depths of the Terran defense. Corps' headquarters. Buried beneath the Swiss Alps, Admiral Chen stood before a wall of screens showing the galaxy's political landscape. Her aide, Commander James Park, approached with the latest intelligence reports. Admiral, the Valdari have hit another convoy. The freighter New Dawn was destroyed completely. No survivors this time. Chen's expression didn't change. How many? Does that make 23 vessels, Admiral? Over 200 civilian deaths. And the Council's response? Commander Park's jaw tightened. They're calling for measured diplomatic solutions and proportionate responses. The Valdari ambassador claims they're simply collecting taxes in imperial space. Admiral Chen turned to face him. Send a message to all Terran Defense Corps. Stations, authorization code, Guzavan. It's time to stop pretending. The message that went out to every human military installation was brief. The children have forgotten why we learned to be gentle. Remind them. The Galactic Council's blindness. The Galactic Council had governed interstellar relations for over 1,000 years. They had seen empires rise and fall, witnessed wars that consumed entire star systems, and brokered peace between species that had been enemies for millennia. In their vast experience, they had catalogued every known species into neat categories: warriors, traders, diplomats, scientists, and builders. Humans had been classified as emotional diplomats with warrior tendencies. Their entry into galactic society had been remarkably smooth. They traded fairly, shared technology freely, and showed remarkable restraint even when provoked. During the Krolex incident 20 years ago, when a Krolex battle group had accidentally destroyed a human research station, the humans had accepted an apology and compensation without demanding blood. This pattern of behavior had convinced the Council that humans were fundamentally peaceful. They had strong defensive capabilities, yes, but they seemed incapable of true aggression. Even their military doctrine was primarily defensive, focused on protecting their own territory rather than expanding into others. What the Council didn't understand was that humanity's restraint wasn't weakness. It was a choice they had maintained for 50 years through careful self-discipline and constant vigilance. But that choice had conditions, and those conditions were about to be tested. The tipping point, the attack on New Geneva, changed everything. The colony was home to 3 million human civilians, mostly families who had come to the frontier seeking a better life. The Valdari fleet arrived without warning. 27 warships dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. The colony's defenses were minimal. 3 patrol ships and a handful of orbital defense platforms. Against a full Valdari battle fleet, they might as well have been throwing stones at a hurricane. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 6 hours. The human defenders fought with desperate courage, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. When the last defense platform went dark, the Valdari began their bombardment of the colony itself. The first targets were the industrial centers, then the spaceports, then the power generation facilities. By the time the Valdari finished, New Geneva was a smoking ruin. The death toll was estimated at over 200,000, with another 500,000 missing and presumed dead. But the Valdari weren't finished. They landed troops to secure the remaining infrastructure and began rounding up survivors. The images that reached Earth showed human families being herded into detention camps. Their belongings seized, their homes destroyed. The galactic media called it the New Geneva Massacre. The Council called for an emergency session. The Valdari called it a necessary police action against human aggression. Earth called it the last straw. The awakening, the response came from everywhere and nowhere. One moment, the galaxy was proceeding as normal. The next, everything changed. It started with communications. Every Valdari military installation suddenly found their secure channels compromised. Not hacked, not intercepted, but completely rewritten. Their own systems began broadcasting on human frequencies, sending detailed information about troop movements, supply lines, and strategic objectives directly to Earth. Then came the logistics failures. Valdari supply ships began disappearing in hyperspace, not destroyed, but simply gone. Food shipments never arrived. Ammunition convoys vanished. Fuel depots mysteriously emptied overnight. The Valdari High Command initially blamed sabotage, but the scale was impossible. Thousands of shipments across hundreds of star systems, all failing simultaneously. It was as if the galaxy itself had turned against them. The truth was far more terrifying. Humanity hadn't been building a peaceful merchant fleet for 50 years. They had been building the most sophisticated intelligence network in galactic history. Every human trader, every diplomatic mission, every cultural exchange had been mapping the galaxy's infrastructure with obsessive detail. Now that network was awakening, and the Valdari were learning why humans had been so careful to appear harmless. The allies of opportunity, the Valdari's initial success attracted attention from other species. The Thrakari Dominion, longtime enemies of humanity, saw an opportunity to settle old grudges. The Nexus Collective, a machine intelligence that had always viewed biological species as inferior, decided to test human resolve. Within days, a coalition of 12 species had formed around the Valdari Empire. They called themselves the Galactic Liberation Front and declared their intention to free the galaxy from human emotional instability. The irony was lost on them. They were about to learn exactly what human emotional instability looked like when it was no longer restrained by civilization. The first coordinated strike came simultaneously across 47 star systems, not against human targets, but against the infrastructure the humans had been quietly mapping for decades. The message was clear. Humanity was no longer playing by the rules everyone else had assumed were universal. The galaxy was about to discover that humans had been playing by those rules by choice, not necessity, and that choice had just been revoked. The unleashing the network reveals itself. First sign that something had fundamentally changed came from the most unlikely source, Dr. Elena Buscus, a xenobiologist working on the remote research station Kepler-442b, received a priority message from Earth Command that made her blood run cold. Dr. Vasquez, you are hereby activated as Node 7347 of the Terran Intelligence Network. Your cover assignment is terminated. Your real assignment begins now. Alina stared at the message, her hands trembling. For 12 years, she had believed she was studying alien plant life. The truth was far different. Her research station had been one of thousands of listening posts, quietly monitoring communications, mapping hyperlane traffic, and cataloging weaknesses in alien infrastructure. She wasn't alone. Across the galaxy, tens of thousands of humans received similar messages. Teachers, merchants, diplomats, scientists, artists, and engineers suddenly discovered they had been part of the largest intelligence operation in galactic history. The peaceful human diaspora had been a carefully orchestrated deception. Dr. Marcus Webb, a human anthropologist working with the Zephyrian Empire, found himself staring at schematics of the Empire's capital city's shield generators. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, supposedly a cultural attaché with the Krolex Republic, discovered that her apartment building had been positioned to provide perfect targeting data for the planet's orbital defense platforms, the network that activated. That day represented 50 years of patient, methodical preparation. Every human who had ever lived among aliens had been gathering intelligence, creating detailed maps of weaknesses, and preparing for a day they hoped would never come. That day had arrived. Operation Midnight, a coordinated response, began at exactly 0 o'clock Terran Standard Time, across 47 star systems. The galaxy's carefully maintained infrastructure began to fail in ways that defied explanation. The Valdari Empire's primary communication hub on Kronos 7 simply stopped working. Not destroyed, not damaged, but completely non-functional. The massive quantum computers that managed interstellar communications had been reprogrammed from the inside, their core functions rewritten by software that had been dormant for decades. The Thrakari Dominion's main supply depot found its automated systems had developed a curious malfunction. Instead of shipping weapons and ammunition to the front lines, they began sending packages of children's toys and medical supplies. The correction protocols had been so thoroughly corrupted that every attempt to fix the problem made it worse. The Nexus Collective, a machine intelligence that prided itself on digital security, discovered that their networks had been compromised at the hardware level. Human technicians, working as maintenance staff for years, had been installing modifications so subtle that they were virtually undetectable. Now, those modifications were awakening, and the collective's own systems were turning against them. But the most devastating attacks weren't against military targets. They were against the basic infrastructure that made interstellar civilization possible. The true nature of human technology. Admiral Chen stood in the Terran Defense Corps Command Center, watching as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The massive holographic display showed the positions of every human vessel, every alien fleet, and every strategic target within 1,000 light-years. Admiral Commander Park reported, Phase 1 is complete. All primary targets are experiencing cascade failures. The Valdari are reporting that 60% of their fleet is unable to leave port. Chen nodded, and the coalition response: panic. Mostly, they're trying to coordinate a counterattack, but their communication systems are failing faster than they can repair them. The Thrakari are accusing the Valdari of incompetence. The Nexus Collective has gone completely silent. The truth was that humanity's technology had never been what it appeared. The peaceful merchant ships that had traded throughout the galaxy for decades carried more than cargo. Every human vessel was equipped with quantum entanglement communicators, allowing instantaneous coordination across any distance. More importantly, they carried manufacturing systems that could produce anything from medicine to weapons, depending on the programming. The agricultural equipment that humans had sold to dozens of species could be reprogrammed to produce military hardware. The entertainment systems in human products contained surveillance software that had been mapping alien networks for decades. The medical scanners in human hospitals could be reconfigured as targeting systems. Humanity hadn't been building a peaceful civilization. They had been building the most sophisticated military-industrial complex in galactic history, and they had hidden it in plain sight. The reckoning. The Valdari Emperor Kratos stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching his empire crumble in real time. The reports coming in from across his territory painted a picture of systematic collapse. Your Majesty, his military advisor, General Vorthok, approached with obvious reluctance. The Fourth Fleet has lost all navigation capabilities. They're stranded in the Outer Rim. The Seventh Fleet reports that their weapon systems are firing on their own ships. And the Home Guard. ... double quotes. What about the Home Guard? Kratos demanded. They're requesting immediate evacuation from the capital. The planetary defense grid has been compromised. It's now targeting Imperial ships instead of protecting them. Kratos felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: fear. How is this possible? The humans have never shown this level of technological sophistication. The answer came from an Unexpected source. Ambassador Kira Voss of the Centauri Republic materialized on the bridge via hologram, her expression grim. Your Majesty, I've been studying human behavior for 20 years. I think I understand what's happening. Explain, Kratos growled. The humans weren't technologically inferior. They were pretending to be. Every limitation we observed, every weakness we catalogued, every peaceful gesture we interpreted as proof of their harmlessness. It was all deliberate misdirection. The implications hit Kratos like a physical blow. You're saying they've been lying to us for 50 years. Not lying, Voss corrected. Choosing to appear harmless. There's a difference between being unable to fight and choosing not to fight. The humans have been choosing not to fight, and we mistook that choice for weakness. The network strikes back. The retaliation wasn't limited to infrastructure failures. As the coalition forces tried to regroup and launch counterattacks, they discovered that their enemies knew them better than they knew themselves. Captain Hex of the Valdari cruiser Darkblade led what should have been a simple strike against a human mining operation. Intelligence suggested the facility was lightly defended, with only a small security force and some automated defenses. Instead, the Valdari fleet found themselves facing opponents who seemed to know their every move before they made it. The human defense coordinator, a woman who identified herself simply as Control, seemed to anticipate every tactical decision. Valdari vessels, you are approaching from Vector 77, MARK4. Control's voice was calm, almost conversational. Captain Hex, you're planning to use the asteroid field for cover while your second squadron flanks from the north. Unfortunately, we've been monitoring your tactical communications for the past 15 years. We know your standard attack patterns better than you do. The human response was devastating in its precision. Instead of engaging the Valdari fleet directly, they turned the asteroid field itself into a weapon. Mining charges, positioned years in advance, triggered a cascade of collisions that trapped the Valdari ships in a deadly maze of flying debris. But the most unnerving aspect wasn't the tactical superiority, it was the restraint. The humans could have destroyed the Valdari fleet completely, but they chose not to. Instead, they disabled the ships and broadcast a message. This is your final warning. Withdraw from human space immediately, or we will stop being merciful. The truth about human civilization, the revelation that changed everything, came from an unexpected source, Dr. Elena Boscus. The xenobiologist who had discovered her true role in the intelligence network made a discovery that shook the foundations of galactic understanding, while analyzing the genetic markers of various human populations. She found something that shouldn't have existed. The humans scattered across the galaxy weren't just colonists or traders. They were the descendants of a species that had been spacefaring for far longer than anyone had realized. The official story was that humans had achieved faster-than-light travel only 2 centuries ago, making them newcomers to galactic civilization. The truth was that humanity had been exploring the galaxy for over 1,000 years, but they had been doing it quietly, carefully, and with a level of technological sophistication that made them effectively invisible to other species. The primitive humans that had made contact with the Galactic Council 50 years ago had been playing a role. They had deliberately presented themselves as a young, emotional species stumbling into a vast galaxy, when in reality they had been mapping and studying that galaxy longer than most council species had existed. The implications were staggering. Every assumption about human capabilities, every assessment of their technology, Every strategic calculation, based on their supposed limitations, was wrong. The galaxy hadn't been contacted by a primitive species seeking guidance. It had been infiltrated by a civilization so advanced that they could hide their true nature for decades. The new reality as the coalition forces retreated from human space, nursing their wounds and trying to comprehend what had happened, the galaxy began to understand the magnitude of their mistake. The humans hadn't been defending themselves. They had been sending a message. The message was simple. We have been choosing to be civilized. That choice is conditional. The Valdari Empire, once spanning 17 star systems, found itself reduced to 3. Their fleets were scattered, their communication networks were compromised, and their military infrastructure was in ruins. But they were alive, and that was a mercy they were only beginning to understand. The Thrakari Dominion, the Nexus Collective, and the other coalition members faced similar fates. Their military capabilities had been neutralized, their supply lines had been severed, and their confidence had been shattered. But they had not been destroyed, and that distinction was crucial. Ambassador Kira Voss, now serving as an emergency mediator, addressed the emergency session of the Galactic Council. We have been operating under a fundamental misunderstanding. We assumed that human restraint was evidence of weakness. We were wrong. Human restraint is evidence of strength, so overwhelming that they can afford to be merciful. The galaxy's new reality was unsettling. Humanity had revealed that they possessed technology decades ahead of anything else in known space. Military capabilities that could neutralize entire fleets without firing a shot, and an intelligence network so comprehensive that they knew more about alien civilizations than those civilizations knew about themselves. But perhaps most disturbing was the realization that this had always been the case. The friendly, emotional humans who had been trading and exploring alongside other species for 50 years had been capable of this level of devastation the entire time. They had simply chosen not to use it. The warning fulfilled Admiral Ch's final broadcast to the galaxy was delivered from the bridge of the Terran Resolve, humanity's newest and most advanced vessel. The ship itself was a statement, its design clearly incorporating technology that shouldn't have existed. To all members of the Galactic Council and their affiliated species, Chen began, her voice carrying across thousands of star systems. For 50 years, we have maintained the fiction that we were a young, inexperienced species learning to navigate galactic civilization. This was not deception born of malice, but of necessity. The holographic display showed images of human settlements, thriving colonies, and peaceful trade stations. We are, by nature, a curious and exploratory species. We seek knowledge, we value cooperation, and we prefer to solve problems through diplomacy and mutual understanding. But we are also pragmatic. We understand that the galaxy contains those who view kindness as weakness and restraint as opportunity. The images shifted to show the recent attacks, the destroyed colonies, the murdered civilians. We warned you. We told you to stop attacking us, or we would stop pretending to be civilized. That warning was not a threat. It was an offer of mercy. Chun's expression hardened. You have seen what happens when we stop pretending. This was not our full capability. This was us being gentle. We disabled your fleets instead of destroying them. We disrupted your infrastructure instead of obliterating it. We chose to embarrass you instead of annihilating you. The final image showed the vast network of human settlements, research stations, and hidden facilities that had been revealed during the conflict. We have been here longer than you knew, learned more than you suspected, and prepared more thoroughly than you imagined. We hope this demonstration has been educational. The transmission ended with a simple message. We prefer to be civilized. Don't give us a reason to choose otherwise. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson about the difference between being unable to fight and choosing not to fight. Humanity had spent 50 years choosing not to fight, and the galaxy had mistaken that choice for weakness. They would not make that mistake again.